Going away on vacation could be super tricky when you have a growing collection of plants in your home. It's stressful not knowing if they're getting enough water and light while you're gone, especially during hot weather. What if you're going away for 2 weeks and a heat wave is on its way? How can you make sure your plants survive? Well, fear not, my plant friends, because I've got 9 fantastic tips you should do before you leave to relieve your stress and make sure you come back to thriving plants. And I've got a bonus tip at the end on a nifty way to make sure your babies are getting enough light while you're away, even with the curtains closed, so don't miss out on that. Let's start with the obvious. Give your plants a thorough drink the day before you leave. I do this every time I go away and it saved my bacon plenty of times. I don't worry about the last time I watered the plants either, even if it was only 3 days ago. As long as there are drainage holes in the pot for the water to flow through, then it can handle being overwatered once or twice. Doing this the day before, along with the rest of the tips in this video, gives them the best chance of withstanding hot temperatures while you're away. Whatever you do though, don't leave it to the day you leave. There's just too much going on, and even with the best of intentions, you might not get around to it, which would be a disaster. If you're a bottom waterer like me, then you probably want to consider giving them a thorough drench over the sink to make sure all the soil is fully wet. This will give them the best chance of staying hydrated for longer. Your house will have hotter rooms than others. You just want to be mindful of that before you go on your holidays. Conservatories aren't the best places for plants during heat waves, so you want to move them into the house where it's cooler. If your house is particularly hot, then consider grouping your plants together to create a group humidity effect and hopefully lower their temperature a little bit. I do this with my plants when I go away during hot weather. I group them in clusters with large plants overhanging smaller ones. For example, I might place my large Califair eldergrass on my kitchen counter with smaller plants under its canopy. It's not going to have a massive effect, but it can help during intense heat waves. Self-watering systems can be a real lifesaver when going away for a couple of weeks, and they don't need to be fancy either. One of my favourites and perhaps simplest hack is to fill my bathtub with a few inches of cold water and adding 2 or 3 towels. This creates a nice wet bank for your plants to sit on and draw up moisture slowly while you're away. It'll keep them nice and cool too, which is a nice added bonus. For plants that prefer having moist soil all the time, like califairs and ferns, self-watering pots can be a great option, and there are plenty on the market. At a pinch, you can even set up your own capillary wick system to draw water from a reservoir to the plant's soil. All it involves is having one end of the wick placed in a water jug and the other end buried in the soil. The wick transfers the water to the roots as needed. Watering globes are a fantastic option too, and are glass or plastic devices that can be filled with water and inserted into the soil of a potted plant. As the soil dries out, the water gradually releases from the globe, providing a slow and continuous supply of water to the plant. I often advise to keep your plants in as bright a spot as possible in your home, even if the plant is described as a low light lover like the ZZ plant. Well, that bright light will mean increased evaporation and a higher transpiration rate. All this means is that the plant will be growing vigorously in its bright light spot and using water at a quicker rate than its friends in a darker spot in the house. Before you go away, it's a good idea to pull your plants back from the brightest windows to reduce the water evaporation, even if you have the curtains or blinds closed. It will likely be the warmest part of the room, even with the blinds down, so keeping them further away keeps them cooler and less likely to dry out too quickly. I don't like keeping my plants in rooms with the curtains closed because I want them all to still have the light they need while I'm away. So I tend to move most of my plants into my east-facing dining room where it doesn't get too hot during the afternoon. I don't have blinds in this room, so I sit them on my kitchen island, which is set a couple of meters away from the windows. They get the light they need, but also avoid the heat from being near the windows. If you've not pruned your plants in a while, they're looking a little bit overgrown and unkempt, then this is the ideal time to give them a haircut. The more foliage a plant has, the more it will transpire water through those leaves. Keeping a big bushy plant nice and compact by removing yellowing or dying foliage means it will lose less water during hot weather, and this can make a big difference when implemented alongside the other tips in this video. I would prune at least 1 week before departure day so that you're not frantically trying to do things while getting ready for your holiday in the Bahamas. One of the best tips I can give you is to avoid getting a plant sitter to look after your collection collection while you're away. Sounds odd, I know, but this normally just ends in disaster with a potential to sour a close relationship if things go wrong. It puts pressure on the plant sitter, particularly if they're not that familiar with indoor tropical plants. They might accidentally drown your plants, or even worse, forget to come and visit so that your babies fry in hot weather. And this is much worse when you think you can rely on that person to do the job and don't take any precautionary measures like moving them away from the light. If they're a casual plant owner with just a couple of plants dotted around their home, then I'll just rely on the other tips in this video to get them through to the other side while you're away. They're not going to know the ins and outs of your collection like you do, and there's a big risk of them messing things up. Something that is all the rave in the houseplant world at the moment is propagation boxes. These are large tote boxes that are used to house cuttings in a humid environment to increase rooting success. You would have seen them all over the internet and YouTube as the best way to propagate plants, but these can also be used to great effect when we're away from home. Smaller plants have a tendency to dry out quicker due to the smaller pot size, so keeping them in a large tote box that will have high humidity can stop them drying out. Just add a couple of holes in the box for ventilation. Just pop your plants inside, giving the box a spritz with a spray bottle before putting the lid on. But you don't even have to use these boxes. You can cover each of your plants with a clear plastic bag to reduce evaporation from the foliage and soil. If you're lucky enough to have air conditioning in your home, then lowering the temperature a bit if a heat wave is coming can really save your collection. This will slow down the plant's growth and reduce their water requirements. This obviously isn't the most sustainable option and will cost money in cooling bills, but if extreme weather is on the way, it might be a good option at a pinch. I love this next tip, and I don't just recommend it for when you're away, but all the time. A great way to prevent water evaporation in the soil is to add a layer of mulch on top. This is done all the time in the gardening world to increase water retention and improve soil, and can be just as easily applied in indoor plants. It really smartens up the appearance of our plants too, which is no bad thing. You can use anything you want as a layer really. Good options include wood chips, bark and gravel. I like adding a layer of decorative stones to my succulents because I think it looks really smart and it does a good job of reducing water evaporation so that I can go even longer between watering them. Adding mulch will benefit your plants greatly in hot weather, particularly if you're going away for a couple of weeks. Now, it's bonus tip time. If you're leaving your home for a week or two, then you're probably closing the curtains or blinds to most of the rooms in your house for security reasons. If this is the case, then how do you give your plants the light they need? Well, if you have a couple of grow lights, there is a nice little hack you can implement to make sure they get their 10 to 12 hours of light a day to keep them going while you're away. You can't just leave these lights on all the time while you're away. This would be very expensive and a big fire risk. The solution is to get a timer that you can plug into your wall socket that you can then plug your grow light into. This way you can set your grow light to come on at something like 8 AM and turn off at 8 PM. You can then group your plants around this light so that they all get a share of the light. It's not going to replace sunlight, but it should be enough to not make them miserable. For your next viewing enjoyment, then why not check out this video here where I show you 9 neat ways you can turbocharge your plant's growth, and I'll see you there.